I see what old chaps and chappets, Game Chef and Bertie here.
Yes.
Yes, fellows, and I dare say, as you can see here, we are now taking a live look at the very interesting footage recently produced by Nintendo for the upcoming Zelda on Wii U, and of course, holding a bit of a deeper discussion and analysis of what's actually going on inside this trailer.
Most certainly, we're looking deeply at this because this is a very, very exciting game that's coming out, of course. A lot of the fans are very interested in it. But what does all this mean? Now, for example, we're looking here at the actual screen, which wasn't shown full screen. It was showing them watching a screen.
That's right, and of course, before we carry on there, them is, of course, Mr. Miyamoto and Mr. Aonuma themselves.
Yes.
Of course, these are very important figures
Oh, they
in
are.
Nintendo. So, as you say there, though, Bertie, indeed, for some reason this time, Nintendo chose to show us both on the gamepad and the main screen, as you can see there, an off-screen view of what was going on. It wasn't actually direct feed recorded straight from the TV. They actually showed us from the side angle there, the TV set recorded with the shaky cam, as it were. So we didn't actually get to see the video in high definition, just this sort of blurry image. Now, why was that?
Well, now, this is the question. Now, in E3, at an E3, they showed, I believe it was last year, Link in a very wonderful three-dimensional sort of setting. With very good graphics. Do you remember that?
I know the one you mean. Now, of course,
Can we show that?
we may have it somewhere, I'm not sure.
Right.
But in any case, that was, of course, I think a couple of years ago, actually. Now, that was at the Nintendo E3 conference, and indeed, it showed Link walking through a very wonderfully decorated hallway, similar perhaps to the Temple of Time,
Yes.
and facing off against a giant spider. Do you remember it, old boy?
Yes, I do indeed, yes, and we were very impressed with the graphics, and a lot of people were at the time, and so this is very exciting.
Yes, everyone was perhaps, they perhaps looked at that and said, hey, these graphics are really good, they're jolly, are very impressive, very sharp, that's the way that perhaps we want Link to look in HD. And perhaps people looked at that footage and thought to themselves, well, that's how Link's going to be in the HD Legend of Zelda. Now, of course, that would be a rather good assumption to make, I think, but of course then Nintendo came along next year, or a couple of years later, and showed us Zelda on Wii U, and we got our first glimpse at Zelda in a straight direct feed trailer actually, but it was a cartoony style of graphic.
Yes, and we may have, hopefully, pictures of that for you to see here. Yes, most certainly. Now, the thing is, cartoony, a very big difference between the one we saw prior to that, with the very good graphics.
And the cartoony design. That's right,
Exactly, there's a big difference.
There was a big difference. Now, of course, there's a rather interesting comparison here, because back in 2001, Nintendo showed us footage of The Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, in itself quite a revolutionary game, I think. But of course, back then, the cartoony style of that game wasn't that popular. It was a very large departure and break from previous Zelda games, and a lot of fans said, well, what's this? This isn't the Zelda we know and love. So what they did is they shelved it and only showed it again next year after that, whereupon they finally made some gameplay available. Now, interestingly, I think I seem to recall a lot of fans also saying about this particular Zelda game, the new one, well, hey, this is a cartoony style once more. What's going on here? This isn't the Zelda from the E3 we saw in 2011 or 12.
Exactly. Now, this is the point, one of the points we're bringing up just looking at this trailer, and it does look wonderful. The game looks great fun, but the actual graphic-wise, looking at, as you see it with the two chaps there and then them watching the screen, at that distance, from there, the screen does indeed look like those fabulous graphics we saw at E3.
Yes.
But I think when you get up closer and see the thing closer, you will see you're actually looking at a very cartoony rendered type of game.
As indeed we saw at the preview trailer at this year's E3. Now, actually, I just have something else to show you directly off the screen here. This is quite interesting. It's hard to get the pause just right, but after Mr. Aonuma zooms out there, as you can see, there it is. Can you see that, little boy? If I can pause it at just the right moment,
there it
we
is.
have a close-up of the back of Link's head there. Now, of course, what we can see there is this cartoony, cel-shaded type design, and that's a little hint of what actually the whole game's going to look at. This is not a HD and very sharp graphics, unlike the Zelda we saw at E3 that time.
No.
This is more like the Wind Waker. So if you are expecting a fully HD, almost a Batman-type realism Zelda game, you're not going to find that here. This is cartoony.
Well, most certainly, yes it is. But of course, when he backs out and you have that first screen with Link, I don't know where you can see that now, with him on the mountaintop there looking across, it does look very 3D because, of course, it's the way you're looking at it and the way you're looking at a screen on a screen.
That's right.
It looks very good. But I think, as you say, yes indeed, we're going to see a lot of it actually is very much cartoony. Now, the thing is, what I just like to put forward, the Wii U is very powerful. We saw some fabulous graphics with a Mario Kart, the latest Mario Kart.
Yes, we did.
Fabulous. And we know they've got the power to do it.
They have.
So why are we seeing another cartoony type game here? Now, I think it's going to be very good. I'm not taking away from it. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be very exciting and very good. But Why the cartoony graphics? Would we have preferred those wonderful 3D, even as you say, for want of a better word, Batman sort of quality graphics within Link? Wouldn't it be marvellous to see that?
Well, I think you've got a point there, boy. Certainly, we can't floor Nintendo's design choices too much. Certainly, this has been a conscientious choice on the part of Nintendo to make the graphically sort of a cartoony style see a return. I don't exactly know why they've chosen to do that. It's quite an odd choice, if you ask me, old boy. But obviously, someone in the design team, perhaps even Mr. Miyamoto himself, clearly believes in the cartoony style and they think it can work. Now, previously, if I just finish this, they did also say that the Wind Waker was aimed at a broader audience. All ages could play the Wind Waker, so perhaps they're concerned about losing the younger players of the game too.
Well, perhaps it's a good point. We don't know. Personally, for me, Wind Waker was spoiled by the graphics, but it may be different for some other people. Now, the thing is, just as we're saying this, what do you chaps and chapettes think in the comments, etc.? Would you rather have this sort of cartoony thing, or did you much prefer, if we've seen that on the screen here, the very much better graphics that were shown at E3 of Link there?
That's right, and of course I think it's important to say here the graphics we are seeing now are not so much Wind Waker in themselves, because of course we don't have Toon Link here, this is adult Link.
Yes.
I'd say if anything it's perhaps a bit of a blend between Wind Waker and Skyward Sword. It's like a crossing of those two design styles.
Most certainly, so we're going to have to see, but we think, we already know it's going to be cartoony as opposed to those very much better, sharper graphics.
Okay, so we've covered the graphics all the way. Now let's just get on to some of the finer points of the game itself. Now, firstly, when Link goes up that mountainside, and I've just paused it there, as you can see, there's a strange and mysterious ladder on the right-hand side. Can you see that, old chap?
Ah, yes, I see that, yes.
Now, in the next frame, that ladder actually goes, but it seems to be there for a specific reason. Now, is that ladder there as an observation post, or is it to let Link get greater distance out of his sky or sailcloth? If I just skip the video forward a bit more there, we can of course see in just a moment the sailcloth used in action as he jumps off the mountainside and glides safely down to the land below.
Yes, interesting point as you say there. The ladder.
There he goes.
There he goes now. But the ladder, yes, does that appear suddenly? Is it something that it automatically appears because of something that Link's holding or something? We don't know.
I don't know, perhaps it's an observation post of some sort,
Well,
although
it could
its
be,
purpose
yes.
yet is not entirely clear. Now also, more details here, just once more, pausing at the right moment after he places down the beacon there, rather clever new system. Let's see if we can catch the zoom out at just the right time. It's hard to do, you know. Now we can get a close look at Link's clothes here, or a closer look. Now, of course, we know this time Link is sporting a blue tunic. Now, I wonder why, because, of course, normally he wears green.
Well, yes, that's interesting. Now, at first we thought, well, perhaps it's something to do with the colouring, but no, it does seem to be that it is blue rather than green, which is quite controversial because he's always in green.
He's always in green, and of course, another thing I've noticed, his hair colour appears to be slightly different this time. I mean, actually, in all respects, he doesn't really look very much like Link, old chap.
Well, it's interesting to say, yes. I mean, maybe it's a different... He's an older Link, I don't know.
Well, now, of course,
brother?
this is interesting because Link here is shown using the sailcloth. Now, of course, the Zelda fans out there will know that the sailcloth first appeared in Zelda Skyward Sword, and it's a very special item in that game. So, of course, the fact we're seeing it here in this game suggests that it's at least in some way linked to Skyward Sword. Perhaps it's a follow and sequel from that game.
Well, it could be, we don't know. It's an interesting point, it could well be, yes.
I mean, certainly we've got nothing to do with the sky here. This appears to be very much grounded on Hyrule, as it were. But we can assume it, old boy. He's got Epona the horse here as well, so if this is indeed related to Skyward Sword, as the sailcloth might suggest, then certainly Link's come quite a long way since then, and this probably isn't the same Link that we saw in Skyward Sword.
It may not be. Well, yes, it may not be, but we'll have to wait and see on that one, yes, but it's an interesting point.
There's even been talk, actually, of the main character here not actually being Link at all. Some people have gone so far as to suggest it could even be a she.
Well, very interesting. I was going to say that, sort of held back, but now you said it. Yes, it could well be that perhaps you are playing maybe a brother of Link or something like that.
Or a sister of Link.
Or perhaps you're able to play more than one. You could play, as you say, example, sister of Link or Link at different times of the game. We don't know.
I don't know. Of course, this would not be the first time we've seen a character who has an ambiguous gender in Nintendo games, because, of course, we had Lucina in Fire Emblem, who pretended to be a male for the start of the game, but actually she was a female. So, I mean, I don't know where Nintendo are going here with this. Of course, it's too early to say as yet, but it's a very interesting possibility. Now, also, a rather interesting thing I've just picked up on there, as you can see, when Link pole vaults off the horse, as it were, he can, of course, do slow-motion arrow shooting in midair, but I think that merits something of interest, because, of course, he is shown here here wearing not a sword as such, but a bow and also an interesting sort of rounded shield upon his back. This is not the hide-in shield, and certainly not the regular equipment, or shall I say, set of armaments that Link usually uses. In fact, his circular shield there is actually reminiscent of something completely different, I wonder what all this new gear he's got could mean, and of course, his fancy bow that seems to expand like that and form a sort of blue glow as it does so.
Yes, he has a fancy bow there, very interesting looking, and I like the way he's using the bow in the game's mechanics on Epona, or on the horse.
Yes.
You know, he's actually able to fire it on the horse. Now, you were just saying about his costume, what he's wearing, shield, etc. Could it be, and this is just pure speculation on our point, but it's interesting perhaps to talk about, and perhaps the fans may have some feedback, but, you know, could it be that these are stages perhaps of his life? Maybe this is a particular stage of his life before he goes out to start his tasks, perhaps before he actually becomes, quotes, officially Link, as it were. He might already be a huntsman or something, perhaps, and then he goes on to do whatever he's going to do.
That's an interesting idea. Indeed, we could be looking at a sort of younger Link here. I mean, we've had the possibility of young Link before in the series, and it could be that. Now, of course, as you can see there, Mr. Aonuma perhaps struck me a bit there with the gamepad, but he's using the motion sensor features to place a bright green beacon upon the map. And we're just going to see a look at the gamepad now. And of course, as you can see, as they're saying here, the map this time in this game really is huge. It's such a big playing field. And
big, yes.
Mr. Miyamoto there, of course, zoomed in and out to show us just how big this map actually is. So, yes. I mean, realistically speaking, little boy, how long do you think or estimate or guess it might take to traverse one end of that huge world to the other just on foot?
Whew. Well, I think it's going to, you know, from what they're saying, if you relate what he's showing there on the handheld piece to the screen, it's huge, and to actually walk and even perhaps ride on the horse there will take a very, very long time.
I think so.
Which I think where they're bringing perhaps these beacon things. Now, perhaps it's a little bit like in Wind Waker, where you could move quickly from one place to the other. I think he used the whirlwind or something.
He did, that's right. He used a fast travel. Now, I do hope there'll be fast travel in this game. I'm sure there will be, like there was in Skyrim, of course. Now, just also taking a close look, if you look at the top left hand of the screen there, as you can see, Link currently has 5 hearts, and he also has a green bar, which is sometimes to do with his magic, as it were, bar. So perhaps at this point, this is an early stage of Link's adventure. As you can see, we're being shown in Japanese their controls, with the left stick governing the horse, also the R and A buttons controlling his movements, and as Epona rides along, she, of course, also now has a certain type of autopilot feature, whereby she'll avoid trees and other obstacles on her way.
Most certainly, yes, she does. Yes, that's one of the mechanic things they've added there, where the horse actually, you know, it automatically avoids the obstacles, as you say. You don't have to necessarily move around them, which is like a real horse would do. But interesting that you should pick up on those hearts, because they are there, and perhaps people didn't realise they were there, but they're there, and there's only a few there.
5 hearts,
which does indicate, which, as you say, indicates early part of the game.
I think so.
Which is what I said earlier. Possibly, Link at the moment is perhaps like a hunter or similar, and he's yet to pick up his destiny or whatever he's going to do.
As the hero, that's right.
As the hero, yes.
That's interesting.
Maybe.
He could just be that at this point, old boy. But
he's just sort of hunting, isn't he?
But then again, I don't know, because, I mean, he's got some very fancy equipment. That bow of his is very unusual. Where did he get that from? And also, if you look at the previous preview trailer we had, he actually wears a hood over his head, a bit like the assassins do in Assassin's Creed. And he casts that off and shoots his bow and arrow at the enemy there. So he's obviously got something special going for him there. But we don't exactly know how this all links in, and of course the big question, where's Zelda and where's Ganondorf and where is the Triforce?
Well, exactly. I suppose they'll reveal bits and bobs of that as things go on. But it's very interesting. But certainly the way the game looks, the gameplay, the mechanics seem to be a big step up from what we've seen previously.
Yes.
And look to be rather fun to play. You know, putting aside any graphics or cartoonishness or whatever.
Yes, I think so, old boy. And one of the things that does take my interest quite a lot is this possibility of the open world environment. And of course, we've got here a very much Skyrim-y style approach. As you can see, there's a rather suspicious looking building there.
Like a castle.
And some sort of castle or fort there at the top left, as you can see.
Yes.
And perhaps, again, this suggests that you'll be able to traverse this large open environment and come across things that look like dungeons and go exploring. And you won't need to have certain necessarily sets of equipment in order to get in those dungeons. You may be able to just go blast through using what you have in your brain.
Yes, it looks like that way. Yes, indeed, and it looks like it possibly may be that you'll be able to go around the environment, perhaps killing some certain animals or whatever, monsters or whatever, and perhaps picking up power-ups or things that you can add to your inventory, whatever.
I know. Yes, indeed, right. And of course, one thing I have to say I'm not sure about is I've noticed Epona a couple of times in those screenshots there. She is doing a bit of a strafing motion to dodge obstacles, which horses can't actually do in real life. She's doing a sort of Michael Jackson, I think, well,
never mind.
Dodging left and right, but that's okay. I mean,
of course, we are assuming. Yes, indeed, you should. There's nothing wrong with that. We are assuming this is Epona.
Indeed, she might not be Epona. I mean,
we don't know.
The translator or interpreter did call her Epona real boy, but we don't know for sure. Now, we do know Link has a sword here, but it seems to me as if he's mainly using the bow here, old chap, not the sword.
Yes, he's mainly using the bow from what we can see there, most certainly within this gameplay anyway, but I suppose that's because he's got to. He's perhaps not up close.
I think they're encouraging use of the bow because you're going to be spending a lot of time on horseback there as you traverse the environment, it seems, because, of course, riding the horse is a bit faster than going on foot.
Most certainly, yes, it is. But overall, I think the gameplay here is looking a lot better, don't you?
I think so. And of course, we're looking at a game that's quite far on in development, I think, Elchep. They must have been working on this for quite a while. And Mr. Miyamoto, of course, assured us that the game will be reaching stores or shelves in 2015.
Yes, he did, yes. And it looks all very well and good, and there's a lot of excitement around it. We know this. But let's just hope that it's not in some way spoiled because, it could have been made better if we didn't have these cartoony graphics.
I don't know, of course, that depends. I mean, how important to you, Fideos, are graphics over gameplay? Do you have to have those shiny HD graphics in your game, or is gameplay everything to you? What do you think, Fideos?
Yes, please do tell us. You've seen this one, you've seen an example of the E3 one. Yes, let us know. What do you think overall?
Indeed, there you go then, Fideos. This has been quite an in-depth analysis of the new Legend of Zelda on Wii U. Thank you quite for joining us. Do let us know what you think, I say. And we look forward to seeing you once more the next exciting outing of my word.
Yes,
until then.